October 13th, 1998, 6:42 p.m. In the small town of Brighton Hills, Illinois, 16-year-old Emily Hart left choir practice early. She told her friends she wasn't feeling well and decided to walk the 6 blocks home instead of waiting for her mom. It was cold. Fog rolled in early that evening, the kind that makes streetlights look like ghosts. At 7:12 p.m., her phone pinged a nearby cell tower, then went silent forever. She never made it home. No witnesses, no scream, just gone. The town was shaken. This kind of thing didn't happen in Brighton Hills. Not here, not to that girl. By morning, volunteers had lined up outside the police station. Flyers were printed. A search party combed the woods. Bloodhounds were brought in. Her mother begged on the news, trembling, holding a school photo and shaking hands. Emily never hurt anyone. Please, if you know something, anything. Then, a breakthrough. 2 days later, officers found Emily's backpack behind the hardware store. Inside, her school books, a crushed water bottle, and her phone, cracked but still functional. But there was something else. A keychain, one she didn't own. It was a small metal police badge, scratched, bent. It looked like it belonged to a child's toy set, until the text cleaned it up. Etched faintly on the back was a number, BHBD 027. The department issued it, and it belonged to an off-duty officer. But here's where the case took a turn. Instead of questioning him immediately, the report was quietly sealed. The backpack was misplaced, and the lead detective, a man named Captain Ronald Keene, declared the trail had gone cold. Case status, suspended. Just like that. Among the officers at the scene was a 23-year-old rookie named Jacob Rains. He'd been on the job for only 5 months. This was the first big case he'd ever witnessed up close. And something about it never sat right with him. He remembered seeing the backpack before it disappeared. He remembered watching the sergeant hand it over to Captain Keene. He remembered the badge number, clear as day, but when he brought it up the following week, he was told, "You're new, Rains. Don't get in over your head. Leave this one alone." So he did, at least for the next 16 years. Time passed. The flyers came down. Emily's mother moved away. The case faded into whispers, a tragedy, a cold memory. But Jacob Rains never forgot, because every time he logged into the department case database, he saw the name, Hart, Emily, status, suspended. And every time he asked himself, why was this girl's case buried so fast? What he didn't know was that the evidence wasn't lost. It was hidden, and the man who told him to shut up had more to do with Emily's disappearance than anyone ever imagined. For 16 years, Detective Jacob Rains carried the silence of a cold case like a scar beneath his uniform. Emily Hart had vanished in 1998. Her backpack was found, a badge number linked to someone in the force. And yet, nothing happened. The case was suspended, the report sealed. Life moved on, but Jacob never did. And in 2014, that silence finally started to speak. The call came in just after 11 p.m. Jacob was working late, sorting cold case files no one wanted. A female voice on the line, old, tired, and trembling. "Detective Rains? I'm not sure if you remember the Hart girl. Emily, I use a work dispatch. I think we were told not to log something that night." Jacob sat up. "What do you mean not to log?" Silence. Then a whisper. A call came in. From her street, a neighbor reported a man in uniform outside Emily's house the night she disappeared. I wrote it on a sticky note. I never saw it again. The call ended before he could ask her name. He checked the old call logs. Nothing. Just as she'd said, it had been erased. Jacob's heart pounded. He returned to the sealed evidence log, the one from 1998. Entry number 17. Hart residence. Collected. Personal belongings, doorframe swabs, broken phone. Entry number 18. Missing. Skipped. Unexplained. He blinked. Who skips a number in a police evidence ledger? It was subtle, almost invisible, but now it screamed. He dug to the chain of custody slips, and saw the name he hadn't dared to look for. Keene. Captain Ronald Keene. The same officer who closed the case. Jacob asked questions. Not publicly, not yet, but casually, in the break room, at Friday night patrol drinks. He asked, "Anyone remember the Hart girl?" Responses varied. A shrug, a glance, a lowered voice. "Let sleeping dogs lie, Jake. That case touched the wrong people." Then one night, an old sergeant pulled Jacob aside and said, "If you value your badge, stop asking about her." Jacob went home that night to an empty apartment. The framed photo of his late wife staring at him from the shelf. She used to tell him, "You're the kind of cop who doesn't quit. That's why people will always trust you." But now, he was being told not to dig, not to investigate, not to do the very thing the badge was supposed to mean. That night, he opened Emily's case file again. He stared at the name, Emily Hart, age 16, last seen walking home. And then he wrote down one word. Why? Why was this girl's case buried? Why was the evidence erased? And why did his own brothers in blue want him silent? Over the next 2 weeks, Jacob went rogue, off the books. After hours, he reviewed every case Captain Keene closed between 1995 and 2003, out of 79 cases for involved teenage girls. All died under unclear or inconclusive circumstances. 2 had missing evidence logs. 1 had an autopsy report that contradicted the crime scene. And in each case, Keene took personal charge. Coincidence? Not a chance. But the final nail came when Jacob reviewed Emily's original crime scene photos, ones he had digitally archived himself. There, under the photo metadata, was a name, Lawson, Hank Lawson, his old partner, the one who told him to drop it, the one who said there was nothing there. But why was Hank's name on the raw files? He wasn't even assigned to that shift. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Keene. It was deeper. It was inside the walls. Jacob stood alone in the archive room, staring at a grainy photo of Emily's backpack and a faint outline of a metal badge in the corner. The same badge number that had gone missing from evidence logs. The same badge that belonged to a name he hadn't dared speak yet. And in the corner of the screen, a blinking red light. Someone had just accessed the file remotely. The moment Jacob Rain saw the red blinking light on the precinct terminal, his instincts kicked in. Someone else had accessed Emily Hart's case file remotely from inside the department, and not just viewed it, edited it. The screen refreshed on its own. When it loaded again, 3 things were gone. 1. The evidence photo showing the badge corner. 2. 3. The log entry Jacob had flagged. 4. 5. And most chilling, the user access history. 6. Jacob leaned back slowly, the chair creaking beneath him in the silence of the cold case room. His pulse pounded in his ears. They know I'm looking. He didn't wait till morning. That night, Jacob drove across town to the evidence storage facility, a reinforced, city-run basement built beneath a decommissioned courthouse. Only a handful of officers had access. Jacob had kept his clearance. It was after hours, but his badge still beeped green at the steel entry gate. Row after row of sealed boxes loomed under flickering fluorescent lights, like graves without headstones. Dust filled the air. Silence wrapped around him like a fog. He found the section marked 1998 and traced down the label. Case hashtag 098, Hart/Emily. It was there, still sealed, but the tape looked fresh. He sliced it open with his pocket knife. Inside were plastic sleeves of old photographs, evidence tags, and a cloth pouch labeled Personal Effects Scene Collection. He opened it and froze. Inside was the badge, scratched, bent, number BHBD 027, still intact, still very real. He turned it over and stared at the back, a faint etching just barely visible. Issued, Officer R, Keene, 1989. Jacob took a photo of the badge and bagged it himself. He stepped outside into night air, the courthouse parking lot empty except for his own car and the sound of distant traffic. His phone buzzed. Unknown caller. He let it ring. It stopped, buzzed again. Voicemail. He opened it. A robotic voice played. "You're digging in the wrong grave, detective. Close the file, or we'll bury you with it." Click. Silence. Jacob stood frozen, phone in hand, the badge in his pocket, heart racing. This wasn't just a cover-up. This was active obstruction. And now it was personal. The next morning, Jacob walked into the precinct and acted normal. He brought coffee, nodded at officers, smiled at the receptionist. But when he passed Captain Keene's office, something inside him shifted. Keene was on the phone, laughing, as if the city's rot didn't stain his hands, as if Emily had never existed. Jacob walked by slowly and caught Keene's eyes through glass. Keene smiled, lifted his coffee, nodded. That smile chilled Jacob more than the voicemail. He knows Jacob needed help, but not from anyone inside his department. He called an old friend, Lena Cruz, former Internal Affairs, now working legal for the State Bureau of Investigation. He told her everything. She paused and said, "You still have the badge?" "Yes." "Then you got a target on your back. Don't go back to work until we talk in person. And Jacob, don't tell anyone, not even the ones you trust." But it was too late. Someone had already seen him leave the evidence vault the night before. That evening, Jacob's car alarm blared outside his apartment. When he went down to check, nothing was missing, but the envelope on his windshield said it all. Inside, a photocopy of the badge he'd found burning. Literally, the paper was still warm. No note, no signature, just a message. "You found it once. That's the last time." Jacob sat at his desk that night, badge locked in a fireproof box beneath his bed, staring at the name Emily Hart written on a sticky note pinned to his wall. She had died afraid. Her killer had worn a badge. And now, the walls around her story were closing in again. But this time, Jacob wasn't a rookie, and he wasn't going to stop, because the next thing he uncovered would shake the entire department to its core. For days, Detective Jacob Raines didn't sleep. He kept the recovered badge locked away in a steel case under his floorboards. The voicemail threat played in his mind on repeat. And every time he walked into the precinct, he could feel eyes on him, watching, waiting. Then, one call cracked the whole case open. An unexpected voice from a forgotten name. Her name was Lydia Morgan, a former department stenographer who had retired over a decade ago. She called from a nursing home outside Joliet, her voice raspy with age. "Detective Raines, I heard what you're doing. I think I know what they buried." Jacob's breath caught. "You were with Internal Affairs, 1998 to 2002, weren't you?" "Yes." "And I took the confession." Silence. "Whose?" "Keene's informant. The man who said he watched Emily Hart get dragged into a patrol car and never saw her again." Lydia explained it like a woman purging a ghost. 24 years ago, a man named Curtis Bell was picked up in a drug sweep, a small-time informant with a history of petty theft and addiction. But in custody, he broke down, told detectives he knew what happened to the Hart girl, said he saw Captain Ronald Keene, then just a patrol supervisor, arguing with Emily late at night. Said she got into his cruiser, scared, and never came out. Curtis was interrogated. The session recorded. A full audio tape was submitted, but the next day, Curtis was transferred, and the tape, gone. Lydia filed a complaint, quietly, but the internal file was sealed, and she was pushed into early retirement months later. Jacob tracked down what remained of the IA complaint file. Most of it was blanked out, pages missing, names redacted, but one sheet remained, the intake report. Curtis Bell, date of arrest, October 13th, 1998, the same night Emily disappeared. The timestamp of the interview, 2:18 a.m., just hours after Emily's last phone signal was recorded. It was a missing piece, the confession they'd buried, the voice that could have ended the case before it ever went cold. And someone had made sure no one ever heard it. 3 nights later, Jacob came home to find his apartment door unlocked. Nothing stolen, except one thing. The fireproof lockbox. Gone. Inside was the badge. And the printed case file from evidence storage. Gone. They hadn't left a note. Just a single thing taped to his mirror. This isn't justice. This is war. Shaken, Jacob went to Lena Cruz, the ex, internal affairs agent who had helped him piece the case together. Together, they filed a confidential report with the State Bureau of Investigation. Jacob handed over every copy of his photos, digital files, transcripts. For the first time, the Hart case was no longer just his. The state opened an off-the-books inquiry into Brighton Hills PD. Then came the final blow. A new lab test from the state confirmed something Jacob suspected. The badge found in evidence, the one etched with Keene's ID, matched the fingerprint recovered from Emily's crushed phone. Not just a match, a 100% match. Captain Keene had died 3 days earlier. Stroke, no chance for trial, no confession, no apology, and with him died the last living officer who could have unraveled it all. Or so Jacob thought. In the final page of an archive case from 2001, another suspicious disappearance tied to Keene's precinct. Jacob found a witness statement signed by a name he hadn't seen in years. H. Lawson, his old partner, his mentor, his friend. Jacob whispered aloud, "You were there, weren't you?" And as he turned the page, he saw something that made his blood go cold. A second badge, a second number, etched with the name, Lawson. Detective Jacob Rain stared at the second badge in disbelief. It was old, tarnished, but the engraving was unmistakable. BHBD 031 Lawson. H! The badge belonged to his former partner, Detective Hank Lawson, the same man who taught him how to write reports, handle grief-stricken families, and tell the difference between a cold trail and a buried one. The same man who told him to stop asking questions about Emily Hart. And now, his name was tied to a second missing girl, from a case file Jacob had never even seen. The case was dated 2001, 3 years after Emily's disappearance. Another young woman, Natalie Brooks, 19 years old, vanished after leaving a gas station at night. No forced entry, no robbery, no leads. The final report listed Detective Lawson as the lead investigator. The file was marked closed, presumed runaway, but inside was something Jacob had never seen before. A photo from the original search, showing the gas station's grainy CCTV footage. In it, Natalie was seen walking toward a parked patrol vehicle, and standing beside it, a man, face not clear, but the posture, the build, the stance, it looked exactly like Hank. Jacob's hands trembled as he remembered it. It was late 2001, the same week Natalie went missing. He and Hank had grabbed beers after shift. Hank had seemed off, restless, nervous. Jacob remembered him saying something weird that night. Sometimes the truth's too ugly, Jake. We don't always get to chase it. At the time, Jacob thought he was talking about a tough case. Now he wasn't so sure. Jacob ran Hank's name through every old evidence audit the department had logged. To his horror, Hank's name came up on 3 lost item reports between 1996 and 2004, all involving female victims. One of those reports had the same signature Jacob had seen on the burned evidence envelope left at his door weeks ago. It wasn't just Keene. It wasn't just corruption. It was a pattern. And Hank Lawson was in the center of it. Jacob didn't go through the department. He met Hank at a park bench, same place they used to debrief after long shifts. He brought one thing, a photo of the badge, the CCTV still, and Emily's torn note. He handed them over. Hank stared at them, silent, cold. Then he looked Jacob in the eyes and said, "I told you to let this go." Jacob whispered, "Tell me you didn't. Just say it." Hank paused. "It's not what you think, but it's not something you want to survive knowing either." Then he stood up and walked away. That was the last time Jacob ever saw him. 2 days later, Hank Lawson resigned from the force. No statement, no interview, just disappeared. And in the days that followed, the SBI reopened 4 cold cases connected to Hank's precinct. Jacob testified in secret. The badge numbers were confirmed, and Emily Hart's case was officially reclassified as homicide with obstruction. But no one was ever arrested, because the ones responsible had protected each other for decades. A month after Hank vanished, Jacob received an envelope in his mailbox. No return address. Inside, just a single note, handwritten, shaky. I taught you everything I knew, Jake, but I never thought you'd learn to see me clearly. It was signed, simply, H. Jacob Raines no longer wears a badge, but he tells stories now. Stories of things police don't put in reports. Things buried in evidence rooms. Things that wear a badge and smile at the camera and kill in the dark. And he ends each story the same way. Justice doesn't always come from the system. Sometimes it comes from the ones who refuse to stop digging. Now I'll ask you, if the person who trained you, guided you, ended up being the villain, would you expose them or protect their secret? Let me know in the comments.